It's not the roaring monster of jealousy, the kind that burns with overt resentment. It's far more insidious, a quiet hum beneath the surface of our daily lives. It's the slight tightening in your chest when a colleague gets a promotion you secretly coveted. It's the faint bitterness that taints your joy for a friend's new home, even as you offer congratulations. It's the fleeting thought, "Why not me?" when you see someone else's seemingly perfect life unfold online. Most people never escape this emotional trap, subtle envy. It's not a violent outburst, but a creeping, pervasive unease, a constant, unspoken comparison that leaves the heart restless, never truly at peace. In the relentless currents of modern society, comparison is an almost involuntary reflex. From the curated perfection of social media feeds to the competitive landscapes of our workplaces, schools, and even social circles, we are constantly bombarded with images and narratives of success, beauty, wealth, and happiness. This constant external validation-seeking environment, coupled with an inherent human tendency to measure ourselves against others, creates fertile ground for envy. But not always the overt, dramatic envy that leads to sabotage or open hostility. More often, it's a subtle, almost imperceptible form, a quiet discontent, a nagging sense of inadequacy, a joy that feels just a little less bright because someone else's seems brighter. This is the realm of subtle envy, an emotion so pervasive, yet so rarely acknowledged, that it becomes a silent, internal tormentor, robbing us of our peace and genuine contentment. If you find yourself caught in the subtle currents of comparison and envy, seeking a path to inner liberation, consider subscribing to the Noble Wisdom Path, where we explore ancient wisdom for navigating the complexities of the human heart. To truly understand subtle envy, we must first distinguish it from its more boisterous cousin, jealousy. While often used interchangeably, psychologists and philosophers draw a clear line. Jealousy is typically a three-person dynamic, involving the fear of losing something you possess or believe you possess to a rival, a partner, a job, a friendship. Envy, on the other hand, is a two-person dynamic. It's the painful emotion that arises when another person possesses something you desire and you feel inferior or resentful because of their advantage. Subtle envy takes this a step further. It's not necessarily a desire to take what the other person has, but a quiet suffering from the fact that they have it and you don't, often accompanied by a wish that they didn't have it, or that their advantage would somehow diminish. It's a silent erosion of joy, a constant internal accounting of perceived disparities. Psychologists often categorize envy into two main types, benign and malicious. Benign envy, theoretically, can be a motivating force. You see someone's success, you feel a pang of envy, but it inspires you to work harder to achieve similar results. It's the "I want what they have, and I'll work for it" kind of envy. Malicious envy, however, is destructive. It's the "I want what they have, and I wish they didn't have it, even if I don't get it myself" kind of envy. Subtle envy often hovers in the gray area, leaning towards the malicious, even if unconsciously. It's the quiet satisfaction when the envied person experiences a setback or the subtle dismissal of their achievements. It's the internal narrative that seeks to diminish their success rather than elevate your own efforts. At the core of subtle envy lies social comparison theory, first proposed by Leon Festinger. Humans have an innate drive to evaluate their opinions and abilities by comparing themselves to others. In a world saturated with easily accessible information about everyone else's lives, this drive is amplified. We engage in upward social comparison, looking at those we perceive as better off, and this can lead to feelings of inadequacy and envy. The problem with subtle envy is that these comparisons are often unconscious, fleeting, and therefore difficult to address. We don't even realize how much our inner peace is being eroded by these constant, often unfavorable, comparisons. Subtle envy in everyday life. Unpacking the unspoken. Subtle envy manifests in countless ways in our daily lives, often disguised as something else entirely. It's the quiet undercurrent in conversations, the unspoken tension in relationships, and the hidden driver behind many seemingly innocuous behaviors. Let's explore some common scenarios. 1. The backhanded compliment. This is perhaps the most classic manifestation of subtle envy. Someone says, "Oh, that dress is so brave of you," or "You're so lucky you can just take off work whenever you want." On the surface, it's a compliment, but the underlying message is a subtle put-down, a veiled criticism, or a passive-aggressive jab. The intent is to diminish the other person's perceived advantage, to subtly remind them, and themselves, that their success or freedom comes with a hidden cost or is somehow undeserved. It's a way of leveling the playing field, not by elevating oneself, but by subtly bringing the other down. 2. The dismissal of achievement. When someone achieves something significant, the subtly envious person might respond with a quick, almost perfunctory congratulations, followed by a rapid change of subject or a comment that minimizes the achievement. "Oh, that's great. But you know, they always get all the breaks," or "anyone could do that if they had the time resources." This isn't outright sabotage, but a quiet refusal to fully acknowledge and celebrate the other's success. It's a way of protecting their own ego from the discomfort of another's triumph, by making it seem less significant or attributing it to external factors rather than genuine merit. 3. The constant comparison of children. In parenting culture, the subtle envy between parents regarding their children's achievements is rampant. From academic performance to athletic prowess, musical talent to social popularity, parents often engage in unspoken competitions. It's not about wanting their child to fail, but a deep-seated anxiety that their child might not be as successful or gifted as another's. This can manifest in subtle questions designed to elicit information for comparison, or a quiet defensiveness when their child's perceived shortcomings are inadvertently highlighted. This subtle envy can put immense pressure on children and strain parental friendships. 4. The social media mirage. Social media platforms are perhaps the most potent breeding ground for subtle envy. We are constantly exposed to highlight reels of others' lives, exotic vacations, lavish meals, perfect relationships, career milestones. This curated reality fosters a distorted sense of normalcy, leading us to believe that everyone else is living a more exciting, fulfilling, or successful life than our own. The subtle envy here is not necessarily a conscious desire to harm the influencer, but a quiet, persistent feeling of inadequacy and dissatisfaction with one's own life, fueled by the endless scroll of perceived perfection. This can lead to increased anxiety, depression, and a diminished sense of self-worth. 5. The corporate ladder's silent battles. In the competitive environment of the corporate world, subtle envy is a constant companion. It's the quiet resentment when a colleague receives recognition, a bonus, or a project you felt you deserved. It manifests in subtle ways, withholding crucial information, offering unhelpful advice, or subtly undermining a peer's reputation through gossip or insinuation. It's rarely overt sabotage, but a slow, steady erosion of trust and collaboration, driven by the fear that another's success diminishes one's own standing. This can create a toxic work environment where genuine teamwork is stifled by unspoken rivalries. Famous figures in the shadow of subtle envy. Even at the pinnacle of success, subtle envy can cast a long shadow. The lives of famous individuals, often perceived as perfect, are frequently riddled with the very human struggles of comparison and resentment. While direct evidence of subtle envy is hard to document publicly, as it's an internal state, we can observe its manifestations in documented rivalries, passive-aggressive behaviors, and the public narratives surrounding their relationships and careers. These examples, while often sensationalized, offer glimpses into the pervasive nature of this emotion, even among those who seemingly have it all. The artistic rivalries, Salieri and Mozart, historical allegory. While largely dramatized in popular culture, the alleged rivalry between Antonio Salieri and Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart serves as a powerful allegory for subtle envy. Salieri, a respected and successful court composer, was by all accounts a talented musician. Yet, the sheer, effortless genius of Mozart, his seemingly divine gift, is often depicted as a source of profound, agonizing envy for Salieri. It wasn't that Salieri wanted to be Mozart, or even to destroy him outright, but the constant, undeniable brilliance of Mozart's compositions eroded Salieri's own sense of worth and accomplishment. His envy was subtle, manifesting as a quiet despair, a desperate attempt to understand and perhaps even undermine the source of Mozart's seemingly effortless superiority. This narrative, whether historically accurate or not, resonates because it captures the essence of subtle envy, the torment of witnessing another's innate brilliance and feeling diminished by it, even when one is successful in their own right. Hollywood's unspoken competitions, actresses, and the spotlight. Hollywood, a world built on fame and recognition, is a hotbed for subtle envy. Actresses, in particular, often face intense scrutiny and direct comparison. While public statements are usually diplomatic, the industry is rife with stories of unspoken rivalries, subtle snubs, and passive-aggressive comments. Consider the narratives around actresses who are often pitted against each other for roles, awards, or public affection. For instance, the long-standing, often exaggerated rivalry between certain A-list actresses, where every public appearance, every new project, every award nomination is scrutinized through the lens of who is winning. The envy here is rarely about wanting the other to fail catastrophically, but a subtle desire for their light to dim just enough for one's own to shine brighter. It manifests in carefully worded interviews, strategic leaks to the press, or the subtle art of the backhanded compliment delivered with a dazzling smile. It's the constant, exhausting dance of maintaining an image while internally battling the discomfort of another's success. Political arenas, the quest for power and recognition. Politics, by its very nature, is a competitive arena, and subtle envy plays a significant role. Politicians are constantly vying for power, influence, and public approval. While direct attacks are common, subtle envy often operates beneath the surface, manifesting in strategic omissions, faint praise, or the quiet spreading of rumors that subtly undermine a rival's credibility. Consider historical examples where rising stars were subtly sidelined by established figures, or where alliances shifted based on unspoken resentments. The envy isn't necessarily about personal dislike, but a deep-seated fear that another's ascendancy threatens one's own position or future prospects. It's the quiet satisfaction when a rival stumbles, or the strategic amplification of their minor missteps, all designed to maintain one's own perceived advantage without resorting to overt aggression. The music industry, chart battles and creative differences. The music industry, with its emphasis on chart performance, awards, and public adoration, is another fertile ground for subtle envy. Musicians, often highly creative and sensitive individuals, can find themselves caught in a relentless cycle of comparison. While collaborations are celebrated, the underlying competition for airplay, album sales, and critical acclaim can foster subtle resentments. Stories abound of artists who, while publicly supportive, privately struggled with the success of their peers. This isn't always about wanting to steal another's success, but a quiet frustration that their own unique talent isn't receiving the same level of recognition, or that another's rise somehow diminishes their own hard-won achievements. It can manifest in subtle critiques of musical style, quiet dismissals of artistic merit, or a general reluctance to fully celebrate a peer's triumph, all while maintaining a facade of camaraderie. The academic world, publishing, and prestige. Even in the supposedly intellectual and collaborative world of academia, subtle envy is a well-documented phenomenon. Academics are driven by the pursuit of knowledge, but also by the need for recognition, publications, and prestigious grants. When a colleague publishes in a top-tier journal, secures a major research grant, or receives a coveted award, subtle envy can arise. It's not about wishing them ill, but a quiet, nagging feeling that their success highlights one's own perceived shortcomings or slower progress. This can manifest in subtle critiques of their methodology, a quiet dismissal of their findings, or a reluctance to cite their work as prominently as it deserves. It's a silent battle for prestige and influence, where every achievement by a peer can feel like a subtle threat to one's own standing within the academic hierarchy. Deeper dives, verifiable anecdotes, and case studies. While the internal state of envy is, by its nature, private, its effects ripple outwards, becoming visible in actions, words, and documented history. Let's move beyond allegory and examine specific, verifiable instances and well-documented dynamics, where the subtle undercurrents of envy have shaped public narratives and personal lives. These are not just stories. They are case studies in the human condition, played out on a public stage. The Beatles, the Lennon-McCartney dynamic. The creative partnership of John Lennon and Paul McCartney is one of the most celebrated in music history, yet it was also a complex tapestry of collaboration, love, and undeniable rivalry. Their envy was not the malicious, career-destroying kind, but a subtle, deeply human current of creative and personal comparison. McCartney, with his melodic genius and pop sensibilities, often achieved more commercial success, which reportedly irked the more avant-garde and rebellious Lennon. In a 1980 interview with Playboy, Lennon himself admitted to a sense of envy regarding McCartney's hit, Yesterday, stating, "I go to my grave, and it's yesterday." He also spoke of the competitive nature of their songwriting, where one's hit would spur the other to write something better. This wasn't hatred, but a subtle, persistent measuring against each other. McCartney, in turn, has spoken of his admiration for Lennon's raw, confessional style, a style he himself struggled to emulate. Their post-Beatles solo careers were often seen as a public conversation, with songs like McCartney's Too Many People containing subtle digs at Lennon, and Lennon's scathing, "How do you sleep?" being a direct, though later regretted, response. This dynamic is a perfect example of subtle envy between two brilliant artists who loved and respected each other, yet could not escape the human tendency to compare and feel the sting of another's unique genius. The tech titans, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. The rivalry between Apple's Steve Jobs and Microsoft's Bill Gates is legendary. It was a battle for market dominance, but also a deeply personal and psychological duel. Jobs, the visionary artist, often accused Gates of lacking taste and originality. In the documentary Triumph of the Nerds, Jobs famously said, "The only problem with Microsoft is they just have no taste. They have absolutely no taste. I don't mean that in a small way, I mean that in a big way." This wasn't just a business critique, it was a personal jab, hinting at a subtle envy of Gates' immense commercial success, achieved through what Jobs saw as inferior products. Gates, on the other hand, the pragmatic genius, was often seen as envying Jobs' charisma and his ability to create products that inspired cult-like devotion. In his eulogy for Jobs, Gates acknowledged this complex relationship, saying, "The world rarely sees someone who has had the profound impact Steve has had, the effects of which will be felt for many generations to come." Their rivalry, while often framed as a business battle, was also a story of two men with vastly different talents, each subtly envying the other's unique strengths and impact on the world. The late-night wars, Leno and Letterman. The battle for late-night television supremacy between Jay Leno and David Letterman is a well-documented saga of ambition, betrayal, and subtle envy. When Johnny Carson retired from The Tonight Show, both men vied for the coveted host position. Leno ultimately got the job, a decision that fractured his friendship with Letterman and sparked a decades-long rivalry. Letterman, who was Carson's own preferred successor, moved to CBS and launched his own successful show, but the sense of being wronged and the subtle envy of Leno's position as the official king of late night lingered. This manifested in years of on-air jokes at Leno's expense, a refusal to appear on each other's shows, and a general sense of coldness. Leno, in turn, while consistently winning in the ratings, was often seen as less critically acclaimed, less respected by his peers, a subtle form of envy for Letterman's perceived intellectual superiority. This prolonged conflict, while often played for laughs, was a testament to how subtle envy, when left unaddressed, can fester and define relationships, even at the highest levels of entertainment. The fashion world, designers, and the pursuit of originality. The fashion industry, driven by constant innovation and the relentless pursuit of the new, the next big thing. Designers, who often pour their heart and soul, and indeed their very identity, into their collections, are constantly subjected to comparison and the pressure to outdo one another. When a designer unveils a groundbreaking collection, receiving critical acclaim and commercial success, a subtle envy can be felt by others. This isn't necessarily a wish for the other to fail, but a quiet anxiety that their success overshadows one's own efforts, or that their ideas were somehow better received. This can manifest in subtle critiques of design originality, dismissive comments about production quality, or a general reluctance to acknowledge a peer's influence. It's a constant struggle to maintain originality and relevance, where every success by another can feel like a threat to one's own creativity and standing. The culinary world, star chefs, and the Michelin race. In the world of haute cuisine, where star chefs compete for prestigious Michelin stars and critical acclaim, subtle envy is an unavoidable ingredient. Chefs dedicate their lives to perfecting their craft, creating unique culinary experiences. When a peer receives a Michelin star, or their restaurant is lauded, subtle envy can arise. This isn't a wish for the other's food to be bad, but a quiet frustration that their own talent and dedication haven't been recognized to the same degree. It can manifest in subtle critiques of cooking techniques, dismissive comments about dish innovation, or a general reluctance to fully celebrate another's success. It's a relentless pursuit of perfection and recognition, where every achievement by another can feel like a reminder of what one hasn't yet attained. Professional sports, teammates, and rivals. Even within professional sports teams, where camaraderie is paramount, subtle envy can exist. Athletes compete not only against opposing teams, but also against their own teammates for playing time, recognition, and lucrative contracts. When a teammate excels, scoring a game-winning goal or receiving media attention, subtle envy can arise. This isn't a wish for their teammate to fail, but a quiet anxiety that their success might diminish one's own opportunities. It can manifest in subtle critiques of their playing style, dismissive comments about luck, or a general reluctance to fully celebrate a teammate's success. In some cases, it can even lead to a quiet satisfaction when a teammate suffers an injury or struggles, as it might open up opportunities for oneself. It's a delicate balance between cooperation and individual competition, where subtle envy can erode team spirit and affect performance. The Buddhist lens, understanding and transcending subtle envy. From a Buddhist perspective, subtle envy, like all forms of suffering, arises from a fundamental misunderstanding of reality, particularly the concepts of self, impermanence, and interconnectedness. The path to liberation from this silent trap lies not in suppressing the feeling, but in understanding its roots, and transforming our relationship with it. At the deepest level, subtle envy is fueled by the illusion of a separate, independent self, anatta. We perceive ourselves as distinct entities, constantly in competition with other distinct entities for limited resources, recognition, and happiness. This false sense of separation leads to comparison. If there is no fixed, isolated I to be better or worse than another I, then the very foundation of envy begins to crumble. When we realize our interconnectedness, that the success of one is, in a subtle way, the success of all, the sting of envy begins to dissolve. The joy of another becomes our own joy, not a threat. Subtle envy often arises from clinging to the idea of a permanent state of superiority or a fixed identity based on external achievements. But the truth of anicca, impermanence, reminds us that all things are constantly changing. Successes are fleeting, failures are temporary, and even our own abilities and circumstances are in a constant state of flux. When we internalize this truth, the perceived advantages of others lose their power to disturb our peace. Why envy something that is inherently impermanent? This understanding fosters a sense of detachment, allowing us to appreciate achievements without becoming entangled in the suffering of comparison. Subtle envy is a direct manifestation of tanha, craving, and upadana, attachment. We crave what others have, their beauty, their talent, their wealth, their recognition, and we attach to the idea that having these things will bring us lasting happiness or validate our worth. When these cravings are frustrated by the reality of another's possession, envy arises. The Buddhist path teaches us to observe these cravings without judgment, to understand that they are the source of our suffering, and to gradually loosen their grip. By releasing the attachment to external validation and material possessions, we free ourselves from the endless cycle of comparison and the pain of subtle envy. In Buddhist psychology, mana refers to conceit or pride, which often manifests as a subtle form of comparison. It's the tendency to measure oneself against others, leading to feelings of superiority, inferiority, or equality. Subtle envy is deeply intertwined with this mana. When we compare ourselves to someone we perceive as having more, we feel inferior and envy arises. When we compare ourselves to someone we perceive as having less, we feel superior, which is another form of attachment and can lead to a different kind of suffering. The path is to transcend this constant measuring, to see each being as unique and inherently worthy beyond the fluctuating scales of comparison. Practices for cultivating inner peace and dissolving subtle envy. The good news is that subtle envy, while pervasive, is not an insurmountable obstacle. Through consistent practice and a shift in perspective, we can gradually dissolve its grip and cultivate genuine inner peace and joy for others' success. These practices are rooted in Buddhist principles but are universally applicable. 1. Mindful awareness of the envious thought, sati. The first and most crucial step is to simply notice when subtle envy arises. It's often so fleeting, so quickly dismissed, that we don't even register its presence. When you feel that slight pang of discomfort, that subtle tightening, that urge to dismiss someone's success, pause. Don't judge yourself for feeling it. Just observe, envy is here. Name it. Acknowledge it. This act of mindful observation creates a space between you and the emotion, preventing it from taking root and festering. It's like shining a light on a hidden corner, bringing it into awareness. 2. Practice sympathetic joy, mudita. Mudita, or sympathetic joy, is the direct antidote to envy. It's the practice of genuinely rejoicing in the happiness and success of others. This isn't about faking it until you make it. It's about actively cultivating a sincere wish for others' well-being. When you hear of someone's good fortune, instead of allowing that subtle pang of envy to arise, consciously shift your focus. Think, may they continue to be happy. May their success grow. This practice, though challenging at first, gradually rewires your brain to find joy in others' triumphs, expanding your own capacity for happiness. It's a radical act of generosity that benefits you as much as it benefits them. 3. Contemplate interconnectedness, dependent origination. Reflect on the principle of dependent origination or interconnectedness. No one achieves success in a vacuum. Every achievement is the result of countless factors: their own effort, the support of others, favorable circumstances, past karma, and so on. When you see someone's success, consider all the unseen forces that contributed to it, and recognize that their success, in some way, contributes to the collective well-being. A successful artist inspires others. A successful scientist benefits humanity. A successful business creates jobs. By seeing the interconnectedness, the perceived threat of another's success dissolves, replaced by a sense of shared humanity and mutual benefit. 4. Focus on your own path, right effort. Instead of constantly comparing yourself to others, redirect your energy to your own path. Focus on your own growth, your own efforts, your own unique talents and contributions. The Buddhist concept of samma vayama, right effort, encourages us to cultivate wholesome states and abandon unwholesome ones. This means actively working on your own goals and aspirations, not in competition with others, but in alignment with your own values and potential. When you are deeply engaged in your own journey, the need to constantly measure yourself against others diminishes. Your energy is directed inward, towards self-improvement, rather than outward, towards comparison. 5. Practice gratitude, appreciation. Cultivate a deep sense of gratitude for what you already have. Subtle envy often arises from a feeling of lack, a focus on what we don't possess. By consciously practicing gratitude for the blessings in your life, your health, your relationships, your opportunities, even the simple things like a warm meal or a beautiful sunset, you shift your mindset from scarcity to abundance. This doesn't mean ignoring challenges, but it creates a foundation of contentment that makes the pangs of envy less potent. A grateful heart has less room for resentment. 6. Embrace imperfection and vulnerability. In a world that often demands perfection, embracing our imperfections and vulnerabilities is a radical act of self-acceptance. Subtle envy thrives on the illusion that others are perfect and we are not. When we acknowledge our own struggles, our own shortcomings, and our own unique journey, we become less susceptible to the allure of others' seemingly flawless lives. This vulnerability also allows for deeper, more authentic connections with others, as it creates a space for shared humanity rather than competitive comparison. It's a reminder that everyone, even the most successful, faces challenges and struggles behind their curated facades. The path to unconditional peace. Subtle envy, the quiet, insidious comparison that gnaws at our peace, is a pervasive emotional trap in modern society. It's not limited to ordinary individuals, but infiltrates the lives of celebrities, public figures, and even those who seemingly have it all. From creative rivalries in music and art to power struggles in politics and corporate environments, subtle envy manifests in nuanced, often unrecognized ways, yet profoundly impacts personal well-being and relationships. It's fueled by the illusion of a separate self, the fear of impermanence, and the relentless pursuit of external validation, trapping us in a cycle of endless comparison and dissatisfaction. However, the ancient wisdom of Buddhism offers a profound path to liberation. By cultivating mindful awareness, practicing sympathetic joy, contemplating interconnectedness, focusing on our own path, practicing gratitude, and embracing imperfection, we can gradually dissolve the grip of subtle envy. This journey is not about becoming immune to human emotions, but about transforming our relationship with them, leading to a state of unconditional peace and genuine happiness. a peace that is not dependent on what others have or what we lack, but on the profound understanding of our own inherent worth and the interconnectedness of all beings. By recognizing and addressing subtle envy, we not only free ourselves from inner turmoil, but also create space for compassion, understanding, and authentic connection. When we stop comparing and start appreciating our unique journey, we find true contentment and the ability to genuinely rejoice in the success of others. This is the path to a more fulfilling life, where the mind is not restless with envy, but filled with peace and joy. What subtle comparisons are you making today that are robbing you of your peace? And how can you begin to cultivate genuine joy for the success of all beings? If this exploration has resonated with you, please consider subscribing to the Noble Wisdom Path. Share this video with someone who might benefit from this perspective, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Together, let's walk the path towards inner peace and true freedom.